welcome to Inside Leisure World number 25. My name is Betty Martin, and I'm your host for today. We have a very interesting program lined up, I think, that will be of a lot of interest to many of you in Leisure World, and if not to you personally, you might have a neighbor or a relative or a friend that might want to take advantage of this. What we're going to talk about today is the Lifeline Personal Response Program that's available to anyone in Leisure World. So to start off with, we're going to do a roll-in. Ray Jarris has done a video on this Lifeline, and then after you see the video, we have a guest in the studio who is going to talk about it. She's a very, very knowledgeable person, Miss Joy Wiggins. She's the chairman and installer with Lifeline. So without further ado, if you're ready back there, let's roll the tape in first of all. Okay?
Yep.
Well, hello, Betty. How are you doing down there at the studio? Welcome to the Video Producers Club, Edit Bay, Inside Leisure World. Say, last September we did a show on the Lifeline, and I was getting ready to go into some major surgery, and while, you don't worry about it, there's always that concern, what if I need this? So I wanted to make sure that this information was available to our viewing audience, and this is a good time to just bring back some of the members, some of the volunteers that were part of that interview, and without whom the program just wouldn't exist. It's a very important program as far as the people here in Leisure World, especially those who, they might have a problem with their equilibrium. They may not be able to get around at all. They may be wheelchair bound. Now this Lifeline is not to take the place of caretakers or a neighbor or a contact person, but it's really first line of defense. The units are available within about 24 hours. If you identify the need, you get your doctor to prescribe it. And it doesn't have to be a Leisure World Medical Center doctor. It can be your own physician. The units, well, let me just give you a quick rundown. They run about, the units cost about $400 each, but the cost to the people that need them is $15 a month. Now that is that just covers the cost of some of the cost of operations and the equipment that's needed to support it, some of the expenses for the nurse. What you've got here is a registered nurse on call 24 hours a day. They have 8-hour shifts, obviously. They can't be there all the time. The unit, if the person pages, they squeeze this pendant, the signal goes to a unit there in their apartment, and that unit then dials the emergency number at the medical center, and the nurse has all the information available, and they have a key to get into the apartment. So they aren't tied to security. They can respond immediately, get over there and see what's wrong, take care of the problem. If it's something that requires emergency care, then they can call the paramedics. And in other words, if it's something beyond their capability. The thing is, if there's no answer on the phone, the nurse will immediately hop in her car and run over to the location. Sometimes people hit the thing by accident and so on, and then they can respond and call, say, "Oh no, I really I'm okay," and so on. But if they don't answer, then the nurse hops to it. The unit resets every 24 hours. If the person has not squeezed that pendant once in the morning and once in the evening, the unit goes until 24 hours, and at that time it sends an emergency call to the nurse itself. This is the unit in the apartment. And I'll tell you, that is really important. I had a great aunt that had a stroke. This was in Ohio, and it was in wintertime. She laid on the floor for 4 days before anybody realized it was a problem. By then, she had caught pneumonia, and she died of the pneumonia, whereas she could have been saved if we'd have known to get over there. So that 24-hour response is very important. Now, the unit in the apartment will put out an audible tone whenever the person squeezes the pendant, just kind of let them know that, yeah, the signal has been received and this unit is calling the nurse. Now, as I said before, there's a $15 a month charge. There's no deposit for the equipment. There are no other charges unless you do have to have the nurse come over and render medical assistance. In that case, there's a $36 charge. I would assume that it's covered under Medicare. I may be wrong, but that's a pretty nominal charge for immediate response like that. Golden Age underwrites the cost of the program, and they also take donations. There was one case there, they got I guess a $2,000 donation from Pier 1 Imports in the name of Diane Clark, a 100-year-old resident. And, now this unit is not going to help you if you go shopping. It is strictly for use in your apartment in your immediate area. It's got a 200-foot range, so if you go beyond 200 feet, if you like my unit my garage is quite a distance from the apartment. If I were to go to the garage, I probably would not be within range. And if you go shopping, it's not going to help you there, but when you're shopping, there should be people around there to render assistance if something happens. The unit that's in the apartment is called an auto dialer. There's a two-position switch on there that if you are not at home, then you set the switch not at home so that it doesn't call the office after 24 hours if you haven't responded. Let's see. The time that we did this original interview, John Welton was the president of Golden Age, and he'd given us a little background that the initial investment on this was $25,000 back in 1982, and they bought the first of a package of 12 units, and these things run around $400 a piece. They have about 480 units now available, 450 of them of which are in use. So that means there's a safety limit, safety net there of about 30 units for 24-hour availability. In other words, if you need a unit, one of these volunteer installers will get right over to your unit, hook up that phone unit. I'm assuming you got phone lines. I don't think there's any units in Leisure World that don't have a phone line. The jacks, if they're the old-style jacks, that's the responsibility of Leisure World to provide you with an up-to-date phone jack. Let's see, what else? I'm going to go through some of the volunteers that make up the program, and we'll hear some of their words next. You got tired of listening to me, didn't you? Okay, Betty, I'll remember that. Thanks.
5 days a week, if you call the medical center, you can call there and you can talk to me direct most of the time. Any major medical problems you might have, if you have a history of falling, if you have allergies, and we're also going to ask the physician to put on there any medications you might be taking. And this is all put on a card that the emergency nurse keeps on hand. The minute you press the button, the nurse gets a card that corresponds to that. This is information the nurse has right away when they're responding to your help call.
We have 3 registered nurses on an 1 per 8-hour shift. There are 2 people in our office 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Christmas included.
These units work off a telephone line, which is a normal modular jack within the apartment, and it's a modular telephone connection.
Some of the outside where they charge $75 to $100 for installation, we make no charge for installation.
Thanks to the volunteers.
With having the volunteer installers and volunteer technicians, from my point of view, I am very grateful. We have called for help on a technical problem at all hours of the day and night. It doesn't happen very often, but these people are available for help when we need it.
I'm the new kid on the block. I've done a lot of speaking with deaf people, so I know how to help them lip read. I do know how to install and how to talk to people.
Oh, I'm Danny Brochu. I've been with the client for about 2.5 years, and I'm glad to give a little of my time to be able to help some of these people around here.
The thing that amazes me, most of the time if you come to the people to install it, and you give your explanation and your guidelines how they said, I'm not old enough for that. But it is a peace of mind.
I do most of the electrical and telephone connecting, also besides the instructing the residents and indoctrinating on operation and use of the Lifeline unit.
Yes, I'm Lonnie LaBelle. I'm an installer, and I enjoy being an installer. I enjoy working for Lifeline and these people here. Great bunch to work with. And my satisfaction is installing these Lifelines, knowing that I'm going to help somebody, probably to save their life. I'm paying my dues and I enjoy it.
My name is Phyllis Sanford. I've been installing about 5 years, and I really believe in Lifeline, that it helps the people. I enjoy putting it in.
I'm Joy Wiggins, and I have a story to tell. I've been with the Lifeline for 8 years, and I want you to know that these Lifeliners have over 500 hours in. From November to February, we worked so hard exchanging Lifelines, the old ones that were going out with bad batteries, that we worked extremely hard, and each of us got for over 500 hours. The telephone call and going out and trying to find people and locating people that you haven't heard of for ages, believe me. But I have a story to tell of a 101-year-old lady. I went in, she was lovely, dressed with her high heels on and her clothes and her beads. And I said, I understand you're 101. She says, no, I'm 101 and a half. I says, oh, I says, there's your Lifeline button. She says, right here. And she got up and she went over to her brake front. She pulled it out. She had it in a box. She had it wrapped up with the rubber band, the whole situation. I says, is that going to do the drawer any good? She says, no, but I can reach it. So when I left, I shook my finger at her. She looked at me, she said, nobody has shook their finger at me since I was 8 years old. And she says, I got bawled out then. And I said, well, you just got bawled out again, sweetheart.
Well, there you have it, Betty. That was a very brief rundown on the Lifeline program, and just a few words from the volunteers who helped make that program a reality. Yeah, those clips were provided from the show that Dick Davies produced last September, and it was hosted by John Welton, who at that time was president of the Golden Age, and Now, if anybody in our audience would like to see more detail on that show, all they have to do is contact you at the station there, Channel 3, and we'll be glad to get it on the air again as soon as possible. There's an awful lot of information in there, or they can contact the Lifeline office right there at the medical center. So I'm out of here, Betty. It's back to you at the studio. Take it away.
A good little rundown on the Lifeline personal response. And was really glad to hear some of the volunteers speak just for a moment, even though it was just for a moment. But now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Joy Wiggins. And Joy is the chairman and installer for the program. Joy, I'm so glad to have you here. And
I'm pleased to be here. I believe in Lifeline, and thanks to the GAF, or the Golden Age Foundation, we can do this.
Isn't that tremendous? Absolutely
it's wonderful.
Tremendous.
And my crew, they're dolls.
You've got quite a nice crew. How
Yes.
many people are on this volunteer crew?
There's 7 of us, three ladies and 4 men.
And was there anything on the foregoing that you would like to elaborate on, or to just go ahead and elaborate? Tell us a little more about it, because you're first-hand person right here.
Yes. Well, the one thing that I can say that there was a mistake on is the pendant is worn around your neck, and this is for an emergency only. It is not the response care. When we say you have to reset, this is what you reset morning and night. This is to let the machine continue its own work, and the nurse will not disturb you.
Oh.
This is to summons the help or the nurse. If you feel faint, or if you're just not feeling quite yourself, you can call, you press the button, somebody will respond, and you can talk to that person. There's no charge to say that hey, I feel panicky, or I'm just not feeling quite myself. They can ask questions that would bring out what could possibly be the problem for that moment. The nurse does not have to come out on every response. But when you need her, she's there at the end of the telephone, and she will come out to your house immediately if the telephone is not answered.
Okay, let me ask you this. Why don't we just start at the very beginning? Supposing that I wanted to get it for my mother. I have an elderly mother that lives in Leisure World. Okay, supposing that she and I decided, because we don't live together, that she should have this Lifeline button. Okay, what's the first thing we do? How do we get in touch with you?
The first thing you would do is be to call the medical center and ask for Lifeline. You would talk to probably Bud, and he is our coordinator. He would tell you what papers have to be filled out. If the doctor is in Leisure World there, he would walk the papers to the doctor.
Okay,
And
our
with
doctor is outside.
Your doctor is outside. You could come by and pick them up, or you can have them faxed to the doctor. As soon as the doctor returns them to us, we are installed.
Okay, and what the doctor...
Within a 24-hour period, let's put it that way, after the doctor has sent it back.
The doctor is just telling you that he thinks it's a good idea.
Right.
For
This is
for
the
us
only
to
way you
have it.
can get the responder.
Okay, so then once you get the papers back, then
it comes into us. The reinstallers, Bud sends us out. We work every morning, and we do work afternoons if we have to. We prefer mornings because we are volunteers. We do not get paid in any way, shape, or form, although a lady did give me a rock one time. I'll tell you about that later. But this is the responder for that, and we go out and install. The only thing that we ask, and I am even demanding, that you have a house key ready for us. Because if you don't, security has to come out with the nurse, and that holds everything up and our program is to get the emergency nurse to you as fast as possible.
Oh, I can understand that. They'd have to have. Now, do they keep the key at the nurse keep it at her station, or is it one of those little boxes that's on the door that...
No, it goes right into the nurse's station with your card. It's glued, it's stapled to the card itself.
Okay, now she identifies me by...
When you press this, there's a number that pops up on a monitor, just like your television screen that you've seen on 911.
Right.
Same thing. But on the one that they advertise on television, the Lifeline, you see where they fall in the garden and that they're talking to the machine. That we do not do. These are non-voice. You have to use the responder. It has to be set off by this. A medical person will answer, and the nurse will come to you. Now, I think I got off the track on that somehow.
Well, that's okay, because I think we're just discussing this anyway, and so whatever seems important at the moment.
Thank you.
I understand what you're saying about some of these that you see on television, that are advertised on television.
Right.
These are units that people have to actually buy, and I think you were telling me that a lot of those go completely out of state. Your signal goes completely out of state, and then it bounces back to the 911 or something.
Definitely.
Tell me about, but this one that you're talking about today is only in Leisure World.
World, and it is the only one that I know about. This one here is connected 2 hours. And I know Lifeline itself, when we have to talk to our sales representative, that she cannot believe how well we have done with what we have got. We have, as the gentleman had said before, that it was 450. Well, we had crawled up to 475, and we were starting to lose some of our monitors when they called in, because it's only supposed to hold 400. So this 2 years ago, we had a project where we went through and revamped, and we did reversed to the Delta machine here for 200 people and bought a new receiver also. So now we have 2 receivers that each hold 400.
Oh.
So we have progressed quite a bit. So right now we are at 510, I believe it is. I think is what I installed today. I had 2 installations. And it is a wonderful machine. Then we had to go out to the houses and set 50 of these machines to the new machine. So we are constantly not just installing, but we are checking. If Bud in the monitor comes in with the button pushed and it says low battery, we go out and exchange these immediately. We cannot have that.
That has a little battery in it.
That has a little battery in it, and it does go low.
Is that a battery, something like a hearing aid battery?
Like a little hearing aid battery, and it sends off the signal here when you push this black button here. This comes out and makes a terrible beep that you can hear through your apartment, and then it comes up here and starts flashing. And this is when...
What, this yellow
This
thing
yellow
here,
comes up
that
and flashes.
lights up?
Yeah, it flashes, and it tells you that this is it. And then the next thing is the telephone will ring, and this will be the emergency person responding to your call.
Joy, with 500 approximate, give or take a little, out in the field,
right,
in Leisure World, how many calls a day would you estimate?
I really can't tell you how many there are. I know this morning between 9 and 10 there were 2 emergency calls that came through just because I happened to be on the scene and I saw the fire trucks and I saw the ambulance drivers come through. I know the nurse went out on the first call, so the paramedics and the ambulance came through for the second call because she couldn't leave the first one.
Oh, okay. Let's see, what else was I going to ask you? Do you always have, during the daytime, is there always a volunteer like Bud taking these, coordinating, taking these calls? Do most of you work every day, or?
Well, we try to make it so that we work 1 day a week. Just maybe just in the morning. Like he'll call me on Thursday and say, Joy, I have 2 installations for you on Friday. That's fine. If there is an emergency and there has to be somebody that we something has happened to one of the machines, the battery has gone dead or is just running wild, it can happen, and then he calls one of us out during the afternoon or in the evening. But if it happens and the emergency nurse, then the emergency nurse will call usually the electrician in case something else has happened there, which is our installer also, Mr. LaBelle that you heard on there.
Now you said sometimes there has to be an electricity, an electrician or
that would be for your telephone jack. In the old days, they had a 3-prong that went in. Well, there's just a couple of the fellas that know how to work this, and that is what they come out and they do it. And it's just the telephone wire that it has to be changed. What this does, where your telephone jack is, we pull out the telephone jack, we take and we put this into it, and we put the telephone jack right in here. So you're connected to any phone in your house. We plug this in, and this machine literally talks to you. When you have it all connected, it comes on and it says test, service, phone, and no power. So if there is something wrong here, you can tell it immediately. Tell it's not plugged in right, or the telephone isn't working, and this.
Well, Joy, I hate to cut this short, but I think we're going to have to just get off of this.
Well,
I hate to go. Maybe we can have you back sometime. If nothing else, the least thing we want to do is maybe sometime show that whole film that Dick Davies did on the Lifeline. This has been very informative. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and like I say, the Golden Age Foundation is fantastic.
It certainly is.
Yes. Thank you.
You're a wonderful volunteer.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we have